So I'm going to break this into 4 components. Who, what, when, where. How do we make sure that when we do this, we've set them up to do it somewhere else, not just with us? How will we manage behaviors when they're in there? And this is going to be necessary because generally, if you take and have the school identify a group of kids who don't get along well with one another and put them all in one group, management is something you'd want to think about ahead of time. And then finally, we're going to talk about the actual instruction, how that's laid out. So, for scheduling and logistics, when should we meet and where should we meet? There isn't a hard and fast on this. Generally speaking, if you can meet twice a week for a half an hour, we can make that work really well. Now, certainly more is better, but I don't know that more is realistic because you've got all kinds of other things going on in the school. I do think twice a week is a really good way to do it. Now, I have seen schools do it once a week, and that can work. I think twice is better. But again, the reality is for you and your school is what's realistic for us. I think 2 is better than 1. But probably 3 is better than 2, but I generally try to get 2. Where should we meet? You should meet somewhere where you've got room to have these discussions without being interrupted. I have done this on the corner of a classroom with a bunch of other kids in the classroom, and it isn't very good to do it that way. Not that it can't be done, because I've done it, but it's not the way I would prefer to do it. It really works better when you can be in a situation where kids can talk openly and there are no distractions around us. Who are the group participants? This is different than what I think people typically think of for social skills. Here's what I think you should be doing. You should not have identified a group of kids who get social skills instruction through the year. Instead, you should have a group that is identified by skill. Here's the skill. How to handle talking to a teacher when you disagree with them. Which kids need that skill? Come to group. Maybe we need to run 2 groups because there's so many for that. We run that one, we teach the kids to mastery, we send them back out, and now we have another skill and we pick the kids for that. These kids aren't going to come to social skills group for the year. We're putting kids in skill groups. So, figure out what the skills are that need to be taught in your school. Focus on one skill, bring in the kids that need that skill. When you get everybody to mastery, move to a different skill and bring in the kids that need that. Clearly, there are going to be some kids that show up in almost every group, but not all of them. And what we want to avoid is, you know what would be great is if I could get her to be in your social skills group for the rest of the year. I don't want her in my social skills group the rest of the year unless everything we're teaching is something she needs. This isn't just a way to push kids out of the room to somewhere else. It's remediation. What do you need to be successful? The skill. Bring them over there, teach it, back out. Second thing to think about is we're not going to be able to do everything these kids need to be successful by teaching them in this group. Think of this group as skill acquisition and skill fluency. Once we meet that, everything else happens back in their classroom, back in the school. So I can't make them do it somewhere else. You have to. So I'm going to show you what I can do or what you can do teaching them in the group, but your whole school is going to have to be involved if you want them to do it somewhere else. So we'll try to make that clear. How many kids? The literature says 6 to 8. I say 5 or 6. I just think you get way more engagement when you can keep it to 5 or 6. I've done it with 8. In fact, I think some of the videos you're going to see, there's as many as 8 in a couple of those groups. And it can be done. Ideally, 5 or 6. You don't want to go lower than 5, I don't think. What skills should we teach? I don't have any idea. It depends. What do the kids in your school need? And this is one of the reasons why I hesitate to say people should buy a social skills curriculum. People that make those curricula have no idea what your kids need. Unless you're buying a curricula that leads you to figure that out and build those lessons yourself, they could be completely irrelevant. I think it's easier and better to make them yourself as you go, and I'll show you how to do that. How long does it take? We're going to teach one skill at a time. That skill might have subcomponents. No subcomponent should be taught in less than a week, and no full skill should be taught in less than 2 weeks. I take that back. I'm not saying it shouldn't be, I'm saying it probably can't be. Plan for at least 2 weeks for every skill. And if there are sub-skills, plan for at least a week for each sub-skill. So when does the next group start? I don't know for sure yet. It'll start whenever we reach mastery with this group. If this group takes 3 or 4 weeks to mastery, we don't start the next one yet. We're going to teach until we've got them where we need them, then we'll move to the next skill. So throughout your handout, I've given you a little checklist just to think about. When we're starting to plan for this, have we thought about all these things? And again, this says 6 to 8 students, even though I would really urge you to consider 5 or 6 to be better. Second thing to consider and to be thinking about ahead of time is generalization. Here's what our biggest literature says about teaching social skills. We can teach any kid to do whatever it is we want them to do, and they'll do it every time we ask when they're in that group. Probably not ever again. And that makes these things be completely worthless. If I can teach you that 2 + 2 = 4 and you can do it all the time in class, but every time you leave class you have no idea, it's pointless. Same here. So, what we know is if you want to get kids to do these things when they actually leave your classroom, you got to make that happen. And there are things we can do before training, during training, and after training, which is all the stuff the whole rest of the school has to do to make that work. And I'll just go through what these things are. Before training, before you ever do any training, think about how you can make your training setting look, sound, feel, smell, I guess probably not taste, but all of the senses just like the real setting does. Ideally, you take them right to that setting. If I'm teaching playground behavior, the best place to teach that is the playground. If you can't teach on the playground, then here's your next thought. What place in the school could I go to make it look and sound as much like a playground as possible? So I have gone in cafeteria and we've taped it off to look like 4 squares or whatever it is we were trying to teach kids to deal with. I've taught bus behaviors by actually setting up the chairs in a room like a bus would be, and I taught the group the first day looking in a mirror, which gave me a real appreciation for being a bus driver. It's a very difficult thing to do. But this is what we know. The more your training setting has all the key features of the real setting, the better. With, again, best case scenario would be training in the real setting. But you can't always do that. We call those simulations when you make them happen where they are. Don't use the skills that you think kids should do. Ask this. What do our most successful kids do under those circumstances? Because if you ask the adults, they might have things that don't work for kids. And that's a really important thing. If I'm teaching the kids, when someone says thank you, bow to them. I like that. That seems very formal to me. But all I'm doing is setting kids up to get beat up when they go out there. So you can't choose the skills you like. You have to say, what are the skills that the environment likes? And if these kids are in multiple environments, you might need to teach multiple skills, and you might need to teach them how to know when to use one instead of another. It gets complicated. How big is your, what we call instructional universe, which is all the places kids would need to use this skill? You're going to have to teach these kids a range of variations that cover that. We're going to bring in other people into training, but they're going to be helpers, not the trainers. But they'll take it over when the trainer leaves. Plan to keep teaching until they've got mastery. During training, use real examples. So if I say, today the skill we're going to start teaching is how to handle it when teachers say something you disagree with and you want to tell them what you think. Okay, so I would say, which kids do you want in that group? We want these 6 kids. For every one of those kids, I need at least 5 examples of when that was a problem for them. And if someone says, well, that's only been a problem once, then I'd say, then why are they in social skills group? This doesn't sound like a kid with big problems to me. That was once. Now, I'm not saying you need to go have more problems before you can get instruction. But generally speaking, we're looking for who are the kids that we know aren't getting it from what we have now. I want all those real examples because every example I use during instruction is going to be real. I don't want these kids thinking, that's weird. I want them thinking, hey, that really happened. Because the best teaching examples are the authentic teaching examples. I need a big range of those to choose from during instruction. I'm going to think about why they would want to do it my way. So there's one I've got in here where the skill is, if somebody calls you names, you should walk away, tell a teacher, do these other things. Now, if I'm a kid thinking, so someone called me names, you know what would work even faster than that? Punching them in the throat. That shuts them up right away. And so I've got to give them a rationale why this is actually a better way to do it. So on that one, you're going to hear me saying to the kids, reframing it for them. When you have an argument with somebody and they do something that makes you want to hit them or something, and you get in trouble, they've controlled you. That makes you the loser and them the winner. When someone bothers you and you tell someone else, you're the winner because you didn't let them control you. And so whenever we do those role plays, you'll hear me say, who's the winner? Who's the loser? Because I'm reframing it in a functional way for them. Again, provide a useful skill variation, a range of ways. If you only teach them one way to do something, it's almost certain that in the real world there'll be a situation that doesn't allow that one thing to work. So you're going to need to teach what are the range of things that would work to do this. And make these as realistic as possible. After training, so I've trained these guys up to criteria, and every one of them has demonstrated in a novel way, here's a novel situation, and their role play they demonstrated, I get it, I can do it, I'm good at it. We're done. Go away. When they leave group, I have to have a setup for them. So I'm going, every day we teach, I'm going back to their teachers and saying, hey, you know you've got Christy in your room, right? We've been really working on her being inside voice when she talks to teachers. So be looking for that. Remind her about it. And when you see it, make sure you tell her what a great job she did. So I'm setting these things up all the way along. But once we get to mastery, now I'm backing out and she's got to do it all by herself. And so we're going to have some strategies for creating these little scenarios in the real world. Sometimes I just call them traps. I want to be able to say to Christy the very next time I see her, wow, Christy, that's amazing. You really got that. So I've got to set up a trap to make that happen. And we're going to probably have to confer to figure out that. I want to reinforce those displays in the real world, but if they never happen, I don't get to reinforce them. So that's why we have traps. And I'm going to have to enlist some confederates in the real world to help make this happen. So here's an example. Well, I'm going to show you instruction from the beginning to the end. I'm going to start with the end. We've been working with this group of kids for a while now, and I believe they're all to mastery. The teacher is now back in here with us, and she's in there for a very specific reason. She's in there to witness this so that she can say something to the kid next. So watch this, and then I'll tell you where this goes. And this skill is how to, they gave me the skills, I don't make the skills up. How to respond to a teacher when you disagree with what they're saying.
And explain.
I don't think so. I don't think you can do it.
Let's try it. I want to see. I'm going to watch this. You guys, 3 points if Jarvis can get this right.
Yeah. You guys pay attention. Pay
Let's see if you can
attention.
do both things.
Jarvis, you kicked Stacy. You are gonna have to sit out at recess.
I didn't kick Stacy. Somebody else must have kicked Stacy. Because I wasn't near Stacy.
Freeze. Good statues. I'm going to give everybody a point for statues. I don't know, Whitney, what do you think about that?
I think he was very calm and explained it in a
Pretty
nice,
calm
quiet
voice.
voice.
Nice explaining. He
It
didn't
did not argue.
He didn't say, He
What,
didn't yell,
me?
no way, not me, you're wrong. He said, it must have been someone else. It was very calm. It was 3 points.
Very.
So, that's not the end of this. That was a setup. Now, that kid's going to go back to that classroom with that teacher, and that teacher is supposed to reinforce that again immediately. So if this is the kid, I'm going to go back and go, that was amazing this morning. Man, when we had that thing and I said something to you and you just were so calm. And these are the rules. Keep an inside voice and simply explain what happened, not argue. That was amazing the way you just kept that inside voice and just explained it. That was so perfect. I'm really proud of you. Do you think you can remember to do that again? I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to make you really mad, and we're going to see if you can remember to keep an inside voice and just explain. Oh, I'm going to get you sometime in the next hour. For the next hour, about every 5 minutes, I go by and do this. Oh, there's no way you're going to remember to keep an inside voice and explain, because I'm going to make you so mad. And I'm just going back and forth and doing this over and over and over. And after doing this 20 times, I go over and I say, you did this all wrong. You did it. And that kid goes, I beg your pardon. But this is, and I go, oh my God, that was incredible. You did remember. You really got that skill. I'm going to test you again, though. Sometime this afternoon, and now every 20 minutes maybe, I'll go by and give that reminder. I create another success. I make a big deal about it. Sometime tomorrow, and I just keep spreading this out. All I've done is I've set a series of traps. And every one of those traps is supposed to allow me to give a legitimate praise statement for them doing it right. But I'm also creating repetition. Repetition builds fluency. So I can't get repetition in the classroom to be enough. I need repetition in the real world, and I've got to do it with these traps. As you can see, with younger kids, those traps are super easy. With older kids, you have to be much more subtle. The high school kids will see right through you when you start doing that. So we've got to be much more subtle in how we talk about it and how we reinforce it. But the big idea here was, I'm never going to get this behavior to happen out there by doing it in here. Doing it in here was how to do it, why to do it, ways to do it. Doing it out there has to happen out there. So while we're going to say these kids are only getting 2 weeks of instruction, that instruction shouldn't end when group ends. It continues with the teacher in that classroom and maybe a larger context for the school thereafter. So when we talk about generalization, this would be our checklist. Make sure that we've identified appropriate replacement behaviors from the real environment. What do the other kids do? Real behaviors. We're going to use role play examples that I solicited from the teachers, so we're getting real things to talk about. We're going to practice this in multiple places using a lot of different stimuli so we can make this seem as random out there as possible. We want to use that whole instructional universe. We're going to train and we're going to practice variations. You can't train just one way to do it. We're going to introduce as many of the naturally functional reinforcers as we possibly can. We're going to provide a lot of examples that have a lot of engagement back and forth and a lot of chances to practice it before they practice it somewhere else. And then finally, we're going to enlist others in the real world to help us set traps. The third feature or focus is group management. Now, as I've already mentioned, whenever you bring in 5, 6, whatever kids, all of whom have been identified as not getting along with others, you have a higher probability of having problems in the group. So, I think you should always have a group management system in place and ready to go. I always do. But there are a lot of times when I can fade that out very quickly. But what we all know is it's way easier to have a system in place and fade it out than to go in with no system, have a problem, and try to put one in. So go in with over control and pull back rather than the other way around. I'm going to talk and show you examples of little kids. But I'll tell you a real great trick for older kids. At any age older where they don't want to be in this group, turn the whole thing around on them by taking in a video camera and saying, we are here to make movies about how to do these things right, and they're to be shown to other kids so they can see how to do this right. Those kids that do not want to do a role play, do not want to talk about this, are thrilled to be an actor. We can get these kids that would never do it under any other circumstances to do it as a film thing. I give them jobs. You get to run the camera, you get to be the director, you get to, and it makes them all part of the discussion about what kind of an angle do we need to see how she's really controlling the way she uses her voice. Where should the mic be to really capture the fact that she's explaining, we use this to talk through the whole thing. And the management system with that simply becomes quiet on the set. We need to get quiet on the set in order to run this next place. Who's got this job? And you just keep taking it back to, we've got a task to do. You guys are special. You've been selected to help us shoot these things. And I've done this in an alternative high school with some really challenging kids that when they thought they were making movies for everybody to see, and we did show them everybody, they were right on top of it. But that's a trick you can use. I guess you could use it with younger kids too. With the younger kids, I think the instruction needs to be more precise, so I haven't done it as often that way. But be thinking about what that system might be. As with your teaching anything in any classroom, we want to have consistency. We want to do this at the same time, in the same way, with the same sequence every time we do it. This should be part of a routine. We don't want kids coming into this group every week and thinking, what are we going to do now? It should be, we always do the same thing. We're learning about these skills. I get a chance to practice them. We get a chance to practice them in real. I get a lot of feedback. We leave. We get this going as a routine. It'll make it much easier to get through this every time we meet. So on the very first time we meet, I teach the key rules. In fact, the very first lesson we ever have, the entire session, which is generally about 20 minutes of just that session part, is about what to do when you're here. I have 3 rules. With little kids, they are listen. I can tell you're listening when you're looking at the person who's talking and you're not talking. That's listening. The other one is participate. I say do something, you do what I ask, that's participating. And a third one I have is called freeze. Freeze! You'll see me do that all the time on these. And that's what I taught them is how to stop something. You become a statue when I say freeze. And the reason I have that is because if I'm just saying, all right, I think we're done now, you guys come back over here, it's hard to get everybody together. When I yell freeze and everybody just stops, that makes it easier to give the next direction. With older kids, these are easy. They are quiet on the set, action, cut. But I teach them, they're the same thing. I teach them the same rules, but they're words that are video rules. But it's the same set of things we're trying to get kids to do. So I teach this as a lesson. You're going to see 2 groups, I think, just 2 groups mostly here. This first group is all anger control. So I was asked, would you teach these kids how to handle frustration when another kid makes them angry? Yes. What should I be teaching? I don't know, give me the examples. And they go, oh, here's this one time this kid called him a name on the playground and this happened. Another time someone got in front of him in line and they argued and he punched him. I want those from every kid you're giving me because those are going to be the examples I use. So this is day 1. And I'm just the weird guy that showed up. They've never seen me before.
First one is called listening. There are two things you have to do to listen. I'm going to tell you what they are. You ready? One thing you have to do to listen is what all of you guys are doing right now. You have to look at the person who's talking. So I'm talking right now, and I see a bunch of people looking at me, so I'm going to give out points. 1 point for everybody for doing the first part of listening.
1 point for you.
I'll give myself a point too. Thank you. Second thing you have to do to listen is not talk, not make noise. So if I'm listening, I'm looking at somebody, and I'm not making noise. Man, all you guys are already knowing how to do this.
Okay, so again, this whole first day with the little kids at least, I'm going to spend getting them to get this. And you think, well, that's really overkill. They don't get it right off the bat. And I'll show you this in this next video. What I want to do is I want to model listening and not listening. So I'll say, hey, tell me a story about what you had for breakfast this morning. Don't do it yet. While she's telling me that, I want you guys to tell me if I'm listening. Now, I could run this right now, and then if I say, was I listening, and you guys don't know what listening means, this is a pointless exercise. So I go, she's going to do it, tell me if I'm listening. If I am listening, how will you know? What will I be doing? And if all the kids go, I don't know, then this wasn't time to go yet. So I won't do the first model until I make sure they get the rule. So I'll go back and forth until they can all tell me what the rule is. Then I'll do the model. So you can see that happening here.
I'll practice. Alberto, I want you to tell me something. Just hold on just a second. While he's talking, I want you guys to be the judges about me.
What are judges?
Judges. I want you to tell me if I'm doing a good job. Hang on a second, just a second. Hang on just a second. Wait till I'm going to have him tell me a story. And while he's telling the story, you tell me if I'm listening. If I am listening, DeAndre, what will I be doing? Two things.
Listening,
I'll be
not talking.
I'll be not talking, and what else will I be doing? Looking right at it. Wow, that guy's smart. So, Emerson, if I'm doing a good job, what will I be doing? Not talking and listening. Well, I'll be listening if I'm not talking and I'm looking right at it. Man, smart people here today.
So there's a couple of kids that are just answering it right every time. There are a couple that aren't, and so I want to make sure they've got it. And clearly neither one of them was really with me. Now they know what we're talking about. Now I'm going to do it. So she starts talking to me, and I'm like this, and then I say, freeze. Was I doing a good job? How do you know? Oh, you were looking at him. Right. What else was I doing that makes it listening? And nobody answers. Oh, right, not talking. Good. And I'll just do it again. Let's do another one. And I'll do it until every kid's going, yes, because you did this and this. No, because you didn't do that. And then when they know how to do it, they get to practice. But it's the same way when we do the social skills, actual skills, as we do when we do the behaviors, the rules. You don't get to practice it until I'm really certain that you're going to be able to do it really well. Otherwise, it's a setup for failure. This is just a review. Maybe a different group of kids even, but this would be a second day review.
And thanks for raising your hand. Yes, buddy, what else?
And when you're listening, when somebody else is talking, you don't talk.
That's right. We don't talk when someone else is talking. Yes, Stacy.
Don't call out.
You don't call out. What do you do instead of calling out? What do you do instead of calling out? What do you do instead of calling out?
Be quiet.
What do you do instead of calling out? Raise your hand. Very good.
You know, I'm keeping points on a point sheet, and the question generally is, why? Or why? What are you doing with those points? And the answer is, I'm not doing anything with them. I've set these kids up. I do a lot of this. Well, I'm giving out these points. I just give out points to people who are doing these really good things like listening. Now, why should we care? I've done this a million times, and I've never had a group get more than 50 as a group. That would be like a world record. I wonder, you guys, though, seem like you could probably do that. Let's see. Little kids fall right into that. Older kids say, yeah, nice try. With the older kids, you've got to have better tricks for that. But what I do is I'll start out having those points be competition, like a good behavior game or something, but it's just so I can give that really frequent feedback. And as the group progresses, what I find is they stop thinking about the points and I stop using them. But I let it fade out only when it's working really well. I don't, but very rarely, offer something in exchange for the points, because I don't think we need to do that. If I can make instruction engaging enough, that will be enough to keep it going. I have worked with groups that were so challenging I couldn't get them to do anything I wanted for me to say, good job, and so I did put an artificial thing out there. But once it gets going and they're successful, I have to get rid of that rather quickly. So what we're really looking for here is a lot of verbal praise. That's going to be our motivator. The point is a little extra thing, but it isn't a big extra thing. It's something we do just as part of the routine. So again, this is just a video showing giving out the points during the instruction.
Did you see how everybody was listening when we were doing that? Mm-hmm. I've never seen a group listen this well. Let's give everyone 2 points. This might be, I'm not sure, this might be the smartest group I've ever had. And I've done this a lot of times. Okay, hands down for a second. I'm going to give you guys a chance to...
The other thing that I've really like to think about and do is try not to acknowledge negative behavior if you can avoid it. Instead, acknowledge somebody else who's doing it positively. Even with the older kids, this is very effective. So if she's talking, I say, I love the way these guys are sitting here quiet. I'm going to give extra points. Watch that kid be quiet as soon as I do that. Then I go, hey, you're being quiet too. And you get 1. Over and over and over again, I do this with kids, and it is extremely effective. It allows me to stay focused on instruction of what I want, rather than taking the attention and put it on the negative. So watch these kids. When I start saying thanks for raising your hand to different people and giving points, everybody's hand goes up. They don't even have a question. They just put their hands up because they hear other people getting points for raising their hand. Oops.
A statue. You know what statue's like? You don't move at all. Whatever you're doing, you just stop and become a statue. Brandon, thank you for raising your hand.
I know what a statue is. It's a statue that it just stands still.
It's perfectly still. That's exactly right. Yes, Ashton, thank you for raising your hand. Thank you, too, for raising your hand, guy. A second.
And if you know, I've got all these long videos. If you go through them, it's just time after time after time. You hear me say, great job, and watch everybody else pop into place doing the same thing, too. It's again, very effective. So in order to demonstrate the management thing, I'm going to show you when management doesn't work. This is from a different school at a different time, and this is somebody teaching a small group social skills lesson with a group for the first time, and it doesn't go very well. I happen to be there watching this as a supervisor, and there's a point where as a supervisor you say, we're done. This isn't working. Even if I'm the teacher, there are sometimes when I just think we need to punt today. It's for some reason, it's going berserk. It was going berserk with this group of kids. And I'll show you it going berserk first, and then I'll tell you what happened next. So I've just spliced together a bunch of stuff that happened in the span of about 12 minutes, maybe.
Sit down. Justice,
Where are you going?
No, Justice.
Hey, Cardi, can we do this, Cardi? Cardi. Yeah. Where's my kid?
Shyla is doing a great job. You know what? That is excellent. Tell me what you do if you're ignoring someone, Justice. What do you do?
Food.
You don't say anything. Okay, are we ready? Now here's what we're going to do. Latrell, Justice, sit down here.
Cardi didn't give me a right car.
I think maybe he was teasing, but are you in your space? Show me how to sit nicely. Okay. Monique, it's your turn. That's not safe.
So there's a point where I thought, let's stop this. But then I also thought, I wonder if we could bring this back. Is there any trick we have big enough to bring this back? So here's one of those circumstances when I think, I might use a tangible reinforcer here because I need something big enough to capture their attention. So I was kind of frantic. What can I do? What can I do? And I looked through my backpack and I had this tin of Altoids. And I thought, they won't know what these are. And that's perfect. So I just said to the teacher, hey, can I step in for a second? And I step in. I say, hey, do you guys know what these are? No? Oh, you would love these. I'll tell you what they are as soon as everybody's sitting down. And here's where I really set the hook. I'm not supposed to give these to kids. And it's just like, what do we have to do to get these? And then I say, here's what I need to see. These are what you get points for. And this is what that looked like.
Okay, everybody in your chairs, quickly, quickly.
Thank you,
Sit down.
Anybody know what these are?
I do, baby.
No.
I know.
I can tell everybody as soon as I see everybody sitting down, it's exciting.
I know.
Wait to see.
Two tickets. Is it baby?
Oh, look at the people. Here's what they are. You got to promise you won't tell anybody, okay? I'm willing to give you one of these under 2 conditions. Here's the first condition. Don't tell anybody because everybody will want one because they're so hot. Here's the second condition. You have to earn 10 points before we're done. If you earn 10 points, I will give you one. If you don't earn 10 points, I can't. You know how you earn points? Here's some things you can do to earn points. Right now, I'm going to give everybody a point because of the way you're sitting there really quiet and looking at me and paying attention. 1 point. Everybody only needs 9 points now. So whose turn was it in this game? Whose turn was it next? Were we up to Monique or were we up to Mercedes?
Me. I know my name, Mommy.
I'm very smart.
How about my name? Plus my name is
Okay.
my initial is MX.
I'm looking for people. You know what? I really like the way Latrell is sitting here right now, not saying anything. I'm going to give him another point. He's already got 2. Let's go to Mercedes. Mercedes, who would you like to ask for this next one? She's going to ask Latrell. So let's hear your words.
Do you have raise your hand?
Can you have raise your hand, Latrell? He says
I
no.
put it.
So tell her yes or no. What was it, yes or no? What was it, yes or no that you're saying to her?
No.
Look at her and say no.
No.
What's her name?
Mercedes.
Say no, Mercedes.
No, Mercedes.
Very good. I'm going to give Latrell his 3rd point. And I'm looking around and Charlotte gets another one. Cody, I'm giving everybody another one right now. Awesome, guys. Latrell has 3. He only needs 7 more. And it's his turn. Go, Latrell.
Mommy, do you get
So what happens there is the Altoids are a trick. If I can make instruction engaging and make them successful, I can get rid of the trick. The only purpose for the trick is to allow me the opportunity to make it engaging and make them successful. If you're going to have to use the Altoids every time, it's going to end up causing you problems somewhere down the line. So the problem isn't using the artificial reinforcers. The problem is not getting rid of artificial reinforcers. The instruction has to be what drives this as we continue. So on my management strategies, did I teach exactly what I want for behavior on that first lesson? Do I have a point system or something like that related to the group rules to start with, but I can get rid of it as we go? I will assign the seats. On the first day, I don't know how to assign the seats. Afterward, I start getting a better idea. Plan activities to keep everybody engaged. If there are times when I spend a long time talking to one kid, the others are going to find something else to do. Focus on positive behavior, provide frequent reminders, and if you can, set up little competitions like the good behavior game for those meaningless points. Finally, we get to just teach social skills. When we're teaching social skills, we teach them the same as we do any other academic skill. Why is this important? How does this affect your life? What do we already know about this? Here's this key rule. Watch me. Was that right or not? Once they get it right, you try it, but I give you lots of guidance. Once you're really successful with me doing it with guidance, I set you up to do it in a more authentic way, all on your own. And then finally, you do a novel one as a mastery. That's our instructional setup. We're going to use all those little generalization strategies as we go. So again, think out, what are the things that make instruction work? And there are these things. Tell them exactly what we're here to do, how much, and why. Teach it to them. Engage them. Even when you're modeling, there have to be a lot of back and forth to keep them engaged. And then we need a ton of feedback. Keep that feedback going. When I'm using the point system is not my only feedback. Verbals should happen way more often than the points. The points are just something in addition. And again, as soon as I feel like I don't need those points, I'll just stop doing them and just run it with back and forth. And I'll show you a couple times in here where I stop using the points and it starts to get a little carried away and how you kind of jump back in. In terms of modeling, don't assume that when you say inside voice that they know what that means. When you say explain, that they know what that means. Every component of every skill you'll have to show them and demonstrate for them. So we're going to set these each up as here's what we're going to do today. We're going to guide you through to be successful. So our number one thing here is how many successes can each of these kids have during every one of those brief moments together? So I have to organize what we do to be very efficient. Get in, get seated, move. Because that gives me my opportunity now to start having opportunities to respond and lots of the feedback that I can say, wow, you guys are really doing this well. Now these are shot, again, in Florida, and the beauty of Florida is you get to wear shorts when you go to school. Why else would anyone live in Florida except that you get to wear shorts in school? So these are just groups of first and second graders that I happen to be coming in and working with. This is the group that's talking about anger control with peers. So this is part of the setup. Why should you do it my way?
Stop it! Go away! Freeze. Okay. What's going to happen right now if I do that, buddy?
When you do it, then maybe
What's going to happen to me if I did what I just did?
you would get in trouble.
But she started it. How come I get in trouble?
Because you yelled at her and
Even if she started it, I'm still going to get in trouble. I'm going to let her get me in trouble. I'm not going to let her do that to me. She wins. Look at this. She's bugging me. I yell at her. I'm going to kill you.
God.
I get in trouble. Who won? Who won?
The one who started it.
She won because she got me in trouble. I'm not going to let you get me in trouble. I'm not going to let you do that to me. I'm going to try this.
So this whole thing we're doing right now is function. Why should you want to do this way instead of the way you're doing? Why should you want to walk away, tell somebody rather than punch them in the throat? Because when you punch them in the throat, they just treated you like a puppet. They made you get in trouble. Yeah, powerful people don't let people get them in trouble. The winners don't, and so I'm going to continue to use that language. But that was all the setup for what we're going to be doing next.
Stop it! Go away! Freeze. Okay. What's going to happen right now if I do that, buddy?
That's the one we just saw. For some reason, I've got that in there twice. So we start off with, what's the rule? Why should you use that rule? And then, when should you use that rule? Is it okay to do that under these circumstances? What about if this happened? That's all part of the engagement. But I know that this skill will work under these circumstances, but it won't work under these, and so I'm going to teach those right as part of the instruction right up front. What should you be looking for? Yes, it will work if these things are there. So in this case, are they there? Yeah, they are. See them? Are they here? How do you know? Where are they? Are they here in this one? Right, what's missing? That's the instruction. It's just repetition on that until I can say, now I'm going to do it and you're going to tell me what's going on, followed by you're going to do it with me. So these are the two groups that I'm teaching again. All of these kids are kids that have been in trouble for having altercations with others. And so I am teaching them how to handle it. A part of that instruction, you're not seeing all of it, part of that instruction is going to be, how do you know when you're getting mad? Oh, I can feel myself getting tense, and I can feel I'm getting hot, and I'm clenching my jaw. And so we talk a lot of, when you feel that signal, someone's bothering you, and you feel that signal, that's your time to do one of these things. What should you do? So we're teaching that. This one is responding to teachers when you don't like what they're telling you. That's the skill that was given to me. I said to them, what would you like me to teach them to do? And they said, we'd like them to just shut up. And I said, I can't teach that. It's not functional. You've said something, something, something about the kid. They want to say something back. That's functional. Shutting up doesn't serve a function, so it won't work. So they talked about it and they said, how about if they can answer us, but only if they use an inside voice and if they simply explain, here's what happened. I said, that's easy. I can teach that, but if that's what you say you want, you have to accept it. If I teach this to the kids and you say, hey, you did this wrong, and the kid goes, well, let me explain. You go, no, sit down. This will never happen again. If you say this is an appropriate skill, you have to reinforce it in the real world. So you all have to agree, we're going to let that happen. So they said yes. Here's the actual instruction on those skills.
Here's what I want to ask. If you get mad at somebody and you hit them or call them a name or push them or something, who gets in trouble?
Yourself.
What do you think, Trey? Who gets in trouble?
Yourself.
Yourself. So let's say that I want to get Stacy in trouble. So I come over here and no one's looking and I start doing this. And the teacher doesn't see that. And then Stacy yells at me, man, quit throwing that stuff, quit doing that. What did I just be able to do? I made him get in trouble. I made him get in trouble. How could he not let me get him in trouble?
By telling the teacher.
Telling the teacher's a good one.
So a lot of times I give them a setup and I'll let them tell me what they think is good, and that gives me the entree to then say, here are some other things. But let them be involved in this rather than just having them sit there while I list off 10 things. Have them give you something and use that to start a discussion. Again, the more times they have to think and respond during instruction, the higher their achievement's going to be with the content. So everywhere I can, I want something back from them. If it's a hand raised, if it's a comment, if it's something, but I want a think and do back and forth as much as we can.
When I go to the teacher and the teacher's going to tell me I did something I didn't do, here are some things I need to remember. Are you ready? 1. Should my voice be loud? What? I didn't do that. Or soft?
Soft.
Inside voice. So one thing you have to remember, when the teacher says something to you that you disagree with, your voice should be
Soft.
soft. What should your voice be when you want to talk to the teacher? Soft. The teacher says you did something, you didn't do it. What should your voice be, loud or soft? Jarvis, the teacher comes up and says that you hit somebody and you weren't even there. You want to talk about it. Should your voice be loud or soft?
Soft.
Very good. Let's give everybody...
So the next thing to think about is, after they get what it is, the actual rule is clear, then I get to act it out and they get to tell me if that was the rule or not the rule. But again, I'm not going to do the act out and ask them questions if they really still don't know what it is they're looking for, because it's not serving any purpose. So I'm going to first get them to show me that they know what the rule is, then they get to identify it. And here's what it looks like to identify it. I do it and they answer.
Tell me if I'm doing this good or bad. I think he took some of my stuff. Did you take my stuff?
Nope.
I'm gonna go ask the teacher if she knows. I gotta go find the teacher. Oh, here's the teacher. Could you help me find my stuff?
I sure will. Where did you last have it?
I don't know, but I think maybe Guy might be able to help. He doesn't know.
Well, we can talk to Guy.
Phrase. Nice statue, Guy. Excellent. Have a seat. What'd you guys think? Did I do a good job?
Yeah, indeed. First time.
I hear a lot of voices. I don't see any hands, so I can't hear anything. Kai, did I do?
So this is an example of, I teach them to raise their hands, I teach them to do these pieces, but when they're completely on task and listening and thinking and yelling stuff out, I don't want to squash that. But then I get back to, I can't really answer anybody because it's so loud, then I just say I'm looking for hands again. But there's no punishment involved. But I find no matter what group I'm working with, I'm kind of always on that teeter-totter between, I don't want to structure this so tight that you can't do anything. You're excited, you're part of this, you're engaged. But when the engagement gets to be so much that it bubbles up and I can't facilitate stuff anymore, then I have to find a way to get it back. But you can a lot of times just do that by saying, wow, I like the way this hand is raised, and watch, that'll generally get everybody back on. In this one, watch this kid tell me to freeze.
What's going to happen if you're the teacher? Cody's still the teacher. Francesca, what happens if I do it like this? Tell me again. Say that again. No! I didn't do that!
Freeze.
What's going to happen now, Raul?
You will get in trouble then.
Why would I get in trouble if I'm doing that way, Cody?
Because you have your voice loud and you're correcting.
You get your voice all loud. I'm all getting all excited. All the teacher's going to do when I do that is go, you need to go sit down and be quiet. I don't get a chance to say anything. I wanted to say what was going on. No one even let me say it.
Raul said, freeze. But the reason he said that, off task in some ways, but it was in the context of what was happening. So while that wasn't really appropriate, he was looking at what I was doing and thinking about it and trying to be silly. And the way you respond to that is go right back to him with a content question. So he says, freeze. And I say, so what do you think would happen if I did that, Raul? It's not a punishment in any way. It's just, you were a little bit off task, I'm bringing you right back in. And when he answers it, yes. So when those kids aren't completely off, or even when they are a little bit more completely off, go back to them with a simple question you know they can get right to bring the engagement right back where you want it to. If I would have stopped and said, you know, that's inappropriate, we would have lost the entire lesson right there, and I'd have had to really try hard to start it back up. And there are times when those behaviors are serious enough that you do have to stop, but most of the time I can ask the right question or give the right prompt to get something going again quickly, even when it's a little bit off task. Every time I do this with any group of kids, there'll be a point where they say, oh, I know another wrong way to do this. And we say, I'm sure you do. That's why you're here. But I always remind them, my job as the teacher is to show the right way and the wrong way. And you tell me which is which. Your job is only to show the right way. With the older kids, ooh, could we do a video where I punch them? No, kids already know how to punch. We need videos to show how to do it the right way. We need to show people how to do this in a way that's going to be working for them in a good way. So only the teacher models the wrong way.
Your jaws are so tight.
I'm breathing fast, too.
Yeah.
I should be you know what I should be doing? I should be thinking to myself, uh-oh, I feel tight, I'm breathing hard, I'm starting to feel hot. I better do something smart right now. Tell me if I do something smart right now. Man, give it back!
No.
Why was that not smart?
Bad.
Why was that not smart?
Good. You said give it back.
What would happen if I was in the classroom and said, what would happen to me if I went over and did that? Yelled at him.
You might get in trouble. The Teacher,
What happened there?
put you in timeout. Oh.
Brandon is raising his hand here, and I really like that. Guys helping me.
So again, bring it back, but I demonstrate the negative way, and we talk about why that wasn't right. I don't ever let the kids purposefully do it the wrong way. Now it's time for them to try it. We've had a discussion of the rules. They tell me what the rules are. They're right. I demonstrate it, and they can tell me when it is and isn't right. Now you get to try. On that first role play, I'm going to guide it a lot. There are some kids I'll make walk all the way through doing a think aloud. So let's say that she got in front of you in line and you're tired of that. She does it every day. So you need to do something. So as you're standing here, what would be the first thought? Are you thinking, how would you know if you're mad right now? What would that feel like? And they say something. And then where might you go? And I might lead them through this whole role play before we do it, because I want to give those prompts. When we do that with the older kids, it's called rehearsal before we shoot one. What do you think we should look like on camera to show this feature? How would you do that if you really wanted to make that look for people like all you're doing is putting a slightly different frame on the exact same set of prompts for getting them to show you doing what it is you want them to do. You can coach these live. You can do these while you're standing right there in there with them when you get started. But as you get going, you fade out more and more and more until there's a mastery one at the end they're doing totally without you. Every time you do a role play, whether it's just you or just the kids or you and the kids, every kid has to have something to do. So you're going to come up here with me and I'm going to make her mad, and while we're doing that, your job is to tell me if you think she was mad and what she looked like, how you know. Your job is to tell me what made her mad. Your job is to tell me if she handled it the right way, and everybody's got something to do. So that when we're done, first of all, while we're doing the role play, they've got a vested interest. And then as soon as they're done, I go back for the engagement here. What'd you think? Was she mad? How'd you know? What'd you look like? Yeah, I agree, she did have that face. Would you? And we're just going to go through one at a time, and then I'm going to have you guys always be the end judge. So do you think she did that right? Yes, you do, because what two things were there? That's right, those are the two things. Great job. New person comes up, and I assign roles to the rest of them. This just keeps going without breaks in it. So here are some examples of role plays. And again, these role plays are with examples that the teachers gave me. So a little bit ago, there was one about, can you help me find my stuff? One of the ones that was given to me was, this kid thought another kid took his stuff, so he went over and grabbed him. Okay, well, what would be a better way? Every one of these was from something real.
Showing everybody else that they can listen. You know what it means to be a judge?
Yeah.
Everybody knows what it means to be a judge?
Yeah. I know.
Judge is when you watch somebody and you decide if they're doing a good job or not. So I'm going to have you guys be some judges.
And here are some role plays. Again, these are the situations the teachers gave me.
The left saying, how do you win when someone makes you mad? Yes.
You can walk away or say someone else.
Or tell the teacher. Exactly right. All right, this is 2 points for everybody if these guys can get it right. Okay, you guys are out playing on the playground, and I'm going to come up and I'm going to tell you guys, I'm going to call your name, and I'm going to tell you to go away. You can't play on my part of the playground. Would that make you mad if someone did that to you on the playground? All right, so how are you going to win? You guys talk together and figure out what you're going to do to win. I'll go over here, I won't listen to you. You ready yet? All right. You guys are watching this, and if they do it right, if they win, everybody here gets 2 points. If I win, that means I make them mad and I get them in trouble. You guys don't get any. But everybody gets 2 if they win. All right, ready? Hey, you baby heads, this is my playground. You guys go play somewhere else. Go away, baby heads. This is my part of the playground. Go away. Okay, freeze. Great statues. All right, you guys have a seat. We better let these guys say what they think. Who won?
Them.
Who won? Cody?
Them.
They won? They beat me?
Yeah.
How did they end up beating me?
Yeah, because they told the teacher.
So who's the one that's...
So a couple things in that particular video. One, in the real scenario I was given, baby heads was not the name that they were called. I cannot call them the name they were called. That's just part of the reality of doing this. We'd like it to be as real as possible, but I can't do it as real as possible. The other thing is, a lot of these, it wasn't the teacher calling them names, it was another kid. And it doesn't work for me to have one of these other kids set up to call them names during this, because that's a behavior we don't need to practice. They aren't mad at this. They think it's funny. All I'm trying to do is get them to acquire the skill and be able to demonstrate it. The reality part's got to come somewhere else. And honestly, even that reality part is really hard to do with kids that only have problems when another kid calls them names, because you can't set those up. Ethically, you can't set those up. So you've got to find other ways to catch these kids doing it right out there in the real world. This final one, both of these kids, one of the scenarios, both of these kids were involved in some sort of a bathroom flooding incident, which is what made this happen.
Everybody should be looking where right now? Cody, Francesca, where should you be looking right now? To see if these guys do it the right way. Ready? Stacy and Raul, you guys are going to the principal's office because I know that you guys are the ones that flooded the bathroom. So you guys need to go to the principal's office right now.
Oh, we didn't did it. Someone else did. There like 3
Freeze.
people.
Were they arguing with me? What'd they do? What'd they do, buddy? They just told me what really happened.
So remember, we're looking at a full learning curve here that goes from acquisition, fluency, maintenance, generalization, adaptation. In this group, we're only teaching acquisition and fluency. Now, there are some things we've done to make it more likely we'll get maintenance and generalization, but that part really happens once they leave this group. So it's not over when they leave the group. And when you think about it like this, it isn't as fun to send your kids to social skills group if they're only going to be there for 2 weeks and they come back, you have work to do. But that's the only way this really works. We do not have data that says kids that go to social skills group for the year have better outcomes. We only have kids that learn the skill and are set up to be successful have better outcomes. Otherwise, we just don't see those things happening for us. So the final thing I do with every kid is they get one scenario that I've held in my back pocket for each kid, that when I believe everything has been demonstrated, they get a novel one to do without any prompts. And when they do that, I've set them free. Generally, at that point, I bring their teacher in and we do something for the little setup to move it back out to their room. But that's the end of it there. Once they master it, there's not more we can do in this group. It has to happen somewhere else. So in our checklist, we have to introduce that key skill. We provide lots of models while we think aloud. There's a lot of positive examples and negative examples, but only the adult gives those ones. We differentiate. Sometimes I have to ask these questions differently to one kid as we go through. Introduce the role plays. Give everybody something to do during the role play. So our big ideas here are the same big ideas that we have when we talk about instruction for anything. Student behavior won't change until adult behavior changes. If they're not doing what you want them to do with social skills, you're going to have to do something to teach them. And that instruction will be what really makes it happen. But instruction is more than just the part where you teach back and forth in the classroom. That instruction's got to go back out to be a set of practices that you use in the real world that set kids up to be successful more often than they fail. If you don't include all of these parts, it simply doesn't change behavior. The technology, the research, the science of this is it's got to be treated like teaching any other skill. That just teaching it and leaving it won't make it happen somewhere else. Are there any questions about social skills instruction? All right, well again, thank you all very much for being here. I've appreciated having the opportunity to talk to you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your school year. Thanks.